Hello, today I'll be talking about 10 great rock/metal albums from the year 1990. Of course, there are many albums that I can choose from, and keep in mind this is not a top 10. These are just 10 albums that I randomly selected that I feel are great from the year 1990, but a couple albums that didn't make the video that I think are great, and if you haven't heard these albums, definitely check them out. Those albums being Act 3 by Death Angel and Spiritual Healing by Death. Again, definitely really great albums. If you haven't heard them, definitely check them out. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into these albums here, starting off with Facelift by Alice in Chains. Now, when it comes to Alice in Chains, many people point to Dirt as their best or as their favorite, but for me, this is actually my favorite Alice in Chains album. Dirt would be in close second, of course, but yeah, this one has to be at the top for me. Of course, the singles on here are still great all these years later. We Die Young, Man in the Box, but I think this album also has some pretty good deep cuts too, like I Know Something About You, definitely one of my personal favorites on the album. Love, Hate, Love, which is a bit darker, a bit more moody. Definitely another highlight for me on the album. Bleed the Freak, I can't remember. Pull You Down is also pretty good, one of the more overlooked songs on the album, but yeah. And also Lane Staley, rest in peace. His vocal performance on the album definitely being one of the biggest highlights of the album. But yeah, definitely an album I had to mention when it comes to 1990. But let's go ahead and move on to one of the big four of thrash, and that band is Anthrax with Persistence of Time. So yeah, something you notice with this album is that it's a bit more darker, a bit more serious. A year before this album came out, the band actually lost a lot of their gear in a fire, 1989. And also, if I remember correctly, Scott Ian was in a fairly dark place around this time. I believe he was going through a divorce around this time. So yeah, again, fairly dark time in the band's history, but still, I think they were able to come out with, I'd say, one of their best albums. I mean, so many great songs in here. Some of the songs in here being some of my favorite songs from the band, like Keep It in the Family, In My World, which when it comes to their singles, I think that's one of their more overlooked singles, one of their more underrated singles. I really like that song a lot. Gridlock is also pretty good. Not talked about as much as some of the other songs on the album, but that's another personal favorite of mine on the album. You also have their cover of Got the Time on the album, which has gone on to be concert staple for them. Belly of the Beast is also pretty good. The album opener, Time, has grown to be one of my favorites on the album. All around a really great album. It would be their final album with Joey Belladonna until he would come back in the early 2010s with, of course, their album Worship Music. But yeah, all around, definitely a really great album from Anthrax. Let's go ahead and move on to something a little bit different with Jane's Addiction. Ritual, I'm not going to even try to pronounce that album title, but either way, this is my favorite Jane's Addiction album. I know some people might point to Nothing Shocking, that would be in close second. But yeah, this album's all around really great. This is one of those albums I'd say you can listen to from front to back with no issues. All around a really good album. Some of my favorites being Stop, No One's Leaving, which is to me one of their more underrated songs. Obvious is also pretty good. Been Caught Stealing, which is one of their biggest songs, is definitely another highlight on the album. You also have the Epic on here, 3 Days, another really good song. Then the album closes off on a more melodic note with Classic Girl. But yeah, definitely my favorite album from Jane's Addiction, and an album that I definitely had to mention when it comes to 1990. And now we're moving back to thrash with one of the German Big Four, Creator with Coma of Souls. Honestly, one of the best thrash metal albums of all time. Definitely one of the best when it comes to 1990. I mean, if you haven't heard this album and you like or love thrash metal, definitely give it a listen. Really great stuff on here. Probably my favorite Creator album. Of course, you have other great albums like Pleasure to Kill, Terrible Certainty, and Extreme Aggression and Violent Revolution, but this one has to be at the top for me. I mean, again, so many great songs. Some songs in here being some of my favorites from the band. When the Sun Burns Red, definitely one of their best album openers. The title track's also one of my favorites. You also have one of the band's big anthems, People of the Lie, which was the song that got me hooked onto this band. You move towards the second half, where you do get some songs that are on the more overlooked side of things, like Hidden Dictator and Material World Paranoia, which has to be one of my favorite Creator songs. Probably would crack at least my top 15, maybe top 10, I'm not sure, but I know at least top 15. Definitely really love that song. Of course, you have other great songs like Terror Zone and Agents of Brutality, but yeah, definitely another really great thrash metal classic. Definitely check it out if you haven't heard it. And now we're moving to another thrash metal classic, Rust in Peace by Megadeth. So yeah, my favorite Megadeth album. Some people might point to Peace Sells, and that's all good, but I definitely have to go with this one. Peace Sells would probably be my second favorite, but I mean, you really can't go wrong with any of the songs on here. I mean, it opens up with easy one of the band's best songs, Holy Wars, The Punishment Due. I mean, the instrumentation in that song is definitely awing, especially on your first listen. But then you have track number 2, Hangar 18, which is probably a contender for me being my favorite Megadeth song. I absolutely love that song. Definitely would crack my top 3. Take No Prisoners, another banger on the album. Well, you also have track number 4, Five Magics, which for me has to be at least one of their most underrated songs. It's definitely not talked about as much as some of the other songs on the album, but it's definitely one of my favorites on here. Tornado of Souls, definitely another bigger song on the album. Of course, you have the iconic solo in that song from Marty Friedman, but yeah, I know Dave Mustaine's vocals might not be for everybody, but I do like his vocals. Definitely unique, I'd say, but again, not for everybody, but again, I like his voice. But yeah, definitely a thrash metal classic. And now we're moving to some old school death metal with Obituary, Cause of Death. Often considered their best, or at least one of their best. For me, this album and World Demise actually fight for being my favorite Obituary album. I really do think World Demise is that good. I mean, of course, some people point to Slowly We Rot as their favorite too, but I don't know. I personally really enjoy World Demise, but yeah, that album and Cause of Death fight for being my favorite Obituary album. But yeah, some of the band's best work is on here, like Infected. One of their biggest songs on here being Chopped in Half. You have their cover of Circle of the Tyrants, originally done by Celtic Frost, if I remember correctly. Celtic Frost is a band that at some point I would like to dive more into. I have heard some of their stuff, but I would like to at some point look deeper into their stuff. But anyways, back to this album. Find the Arise, which brings back the speed, another really great song. The title track probably being one of my favorite Obituary songs. Same with Turned Inside Out, which I think is probably one of their best album closers, maybe their best. But yeah, Cause of Death. Definitely another album in this video where it's an album that you can listen to from front to back with no issues. Definitely a classic for sure. But let's go ahead and move on to Pantera with Cowboys from Hell. I mean, there is no way you can talk about 1990 and not mention this album or Pantera in general. I mean, this album was their breakthrough into the mainstream, and it's often considered one of the best, and I definitely agree with that. I mean, so many Pantera classics on here, like Cowboys from Hell, the title track, Cemetery Gates, Domination. Now, when it comes to their ballads or more melodic songs, Cemetery Gates is probably at the top for me. Honestly, maybe a top 3 or top 5 Pantera song for me. I absolutely love that song, especially Phil Anselmo's vocal performance. That song further proving that he does have a great singing voice. You move towards some of the deep cuts. I mean, Heresy and Shattered. Some of the more overlooked songs on the album, but I really dig those songs a lot. Art of Shredding, fairly solid album closer. Psycho Holiday is another song that I enjoy. That's probably another favorite of mine on the album, but yeah. Pantera, Cowboys from Hell, definitely one of the band's best. Vulgar would be at the top for me, but Cowboys and Far Beyond would probably fight for second favorite. But let's go ahead and move on to Prong with Beg to Differ. The band's best known for their album Cleansing, notably because of their song Snap Your Fingers, Snap Your Neck, but while that album would definitely be number 1 for me with Prong, but this would probably be my second favorite. I mean, if you're not super familiar with Prong, if you're only familiar with songs like Another Worldly Device or Snap Your Fingers, Snap Your Neck, definitely check out the rest of that album, Cleansing, but also check out this album next after that. I mean, so many great songs on here. This is one of those albums where it's clear the first half is definitely the stronger half and the second half is not as strong, but the second half is not bad though. There was some good stuff in the second half. But yeah, I mean, the title track, definitely one of the band's best. Lost and Found, I'd honestly say, is another favorite of mine from the band. Steady Decline is another really good song. Take It in Hand, which is one of the more faster songs on the album. I really like that song too. But yeah, all around, really good album. Definitely check it out if you haven't heard it. Let's go ahead and move on to Queensryche with their album Empire. This album was my introduction into Queensryche. Something you notice with this album is that it's a bit more commercial, a bit more radio friendly compared to what came before it. Albums like The Warning or the self-titled EP or Mindcrime. But yeah, I mean, it has some of the band's best known songs like Jet City Woman, of course, Silent Lucidity, the title track. But I think this album also has some fairly solid lesser known songs or deep cuts, however you want to put it, like The Thin Line, Hand on Heart, Della Brown, which is one of the longer songs on the album. But yeah, of course, Jeff Tate's vocals, he still sounds great around this time in the band. For some people, this is the band's last good album. I personally disagree with that. I'd probably point to Promised Land, and I think they would get their act together. They'd get back on track when Todd La Torre comes back in 2013 with their self-titled album. But yeah, after Promised Land, the band does start to struggle a little bit. I mean, you had Here and the Now Frontier, which I think is okay, but not great. Tribe is a decent album though, but outside of that, the rest is mostly kind of crap. I mean, Q2K I don't think is that great. One or two decent songs, but that's about it. Operation Mindcrime 2 is easily one of their worst. Definitely something they should have not done. American Soldier, I think, that's an album that really bores me to tears. Not that great. Dedicated to Chaos is honestly considered for maybe being their worst. Frequency Unknown also sucks. And he also had that covers album around the mid or late 2000s, which I'm also not too big on. But yeah, Empire, definitely a really great album. Definitely one of the band's best. Let's go ahead and move on to Slayer. Also the final album for this video, and that is Seasons in the Abyss by Slayer. So when you hear about favorite albums from the band, you definitely get different answers from fans. Some people point to Rain and Blood as their best, or Hell Awaits, or even this album. I personally go with Seasons in the Abyss. I mean, the title track, definitely one of my favorite Slayer songs, probably top 5. War Ensemble, definitely one of their best album openers. Spirit in Black, probably a top 10 Slayer song for me. Dead Skin Mask, definitely one of the bigger songs on the album. That's also another highlight on the album too. Skeletons of Society is also pretty good. But yeah, all around, definitely a really great album. Definitely one of the band's best in my opinion. But yeah, those are 10 great rock/metal albums from the year 1990. Let me know your thoughts on the albums that I talked about here. Let me know some of your favorite or least favorite songs from these albums. Are these albums your favorites from these bands, or least favorites, or more towards the middle? And let me know if there's albums that I missed here that you think are also great from 1990, like, of course, Act 3 or anything like that, and all the good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment, like, subscribe. Have a nice day, and take care.